Imagine this: everything you've ever believed about intelligence, its value, its glory, its promise of a better life, suddenly turned upside down. What if being intelligent, or even striving for genius, was not the gift we've been led to believe, but instead a burden, a curse, even the very source of profound unhappiness? Stay with me, because within the next few minutes, you might never want to be intelligent again. Arthur Schopenhauer, one of the most provocative and misunderstood philosophers in history, held a view so radical that it continues to shock thinkers even today. He believed that intelligence, far from being a blessing, carries hidden dangers that few truly understand. And these dangers, according to Schopenhauer, can rob us of peace, joy, and even the ability to genuinely enjoy life. Today, we're going to explore his hidden secret about intelligence, what he saw, why it matters, and how it could forever change the way you see your own mind and the world around you. Schopenhauer was born in the late 18th century in a world scarred by instability, war, and disillusionment. While many of his contemporaries celebrated ideals of progress, reason, and human potential, Schopenhauer turned toward the darker corners of existence. He wasn't interested in flattering us with comforting lies. Instead, he exposed the uncomfortable truths that most people would rather avoid. One of his most striking revelations was the hidden cost of intelligence. To Schopenhauer, intelligence was not merely the ability to solve problems or accumulate knowledge, it was a double-edged sword. It could lift us to great heights, but it could just as easily plunge us into despair. The more intelligent a person is, he argued, the more intensely they experience the suffering of life. Have you ever felt that the more you understood the world, the more alienated or disillusioned you became? That's exactly the paradox Schopenhauer pointed to. Intelligence brings light, but the brighter the light of awareness, the darker the shadows it casts. An intelligent mind sees through illusions, the comforting lies we tell ourselves to keep life bearable. It sees the futility of endless desire, the fleeting nature of success, and the certainty of loss. And with that clarity often comes isolation, as the simple pleasures that bring contentment to others begin to feel hollow and unsatisfying. Here's the paradox. Schopenhauer revealed intelligence heightens our awareness, but it also magnifies our sensitivity to pain and imperfection. The brighter the flame of understanding, the deeper the shadows it casts. Think about it. Have you ever found that the more clearly you see the world, the less able you are to lose yourself in its simple pleasures? That's because intelligence strips away illusions. It unmasks the comforting stories we use to make life feel bearable. It shows us the futility of chasing endless desires, the fleeting glow of achievement, and the inevitability of loss. This awareness can be illuminating, but it can also feel crushing. Instead of filling life with joy, it often leaves the intelligent mind restless, overwhelmed, and detached. Schopenhauer's insights here connect directly to what later thinkers would call existential dread. Søren Kierkegaard, Jean-Paul Sartre, and others built upon this idea that the more deeply we understand the universe, the more clearly we see its indifference to us. And the highly intelligent carry this weight more heavily than anyone else. According to Schopenhauer, this heightened awareness doesn't just reveal life's imperfections. It can erode our ability to enjoy even the smallest pleasures. A less reflective person might find contentment in everyday routines, hobbies, or shallow distractions. But the intelligent person, too aware of their emptiness, often feels these things are hollow. Does that mean intelligence is inherently bad? Not exactly. Schopenhauer didn't deny its usefulness. He valued intelligence as a tool, but warned us not to mistake it for the ultimate solution to life's struggles. In his eyes, the real trap for intelligent people is overthinking, relying on intellect alone in hopes of finding happiness. But happiness, he argued, isn't a product of knowledge or reasoning. It comes from something simpler, less cerebral, and far more elusive: peace of mind. Ask yourself, how often have you been consumed by thoughts that loop endlessly? How many sleepless nights have you replayed scenarios in your head, second-guessing yourself, trying to answer questions that may have no answer at all? Schopenhauer would say this is the curse of intelligence, a restless mind that cannot stop searching even when there is nothing to find. At this point, you might be wondering, if intelligence is such a double-edged sword, should we turn away from knowledge altogether? Should we try to become less aware, less questioning, less thoughtful? Schopenhauer's answer might surprise you. He didn't suggest abandoning intelligence. Instead, he urged us to manage its effects, to find a way to live with the burdens that come with heightened awareness. For him, the antidote was something deceptively simple: tranquility, a state of inner calm, of stepping back from the constant chatter of the mind. He believed that tranquility was the key to softening the turmoil that intelligence often creates. So how do we cultivate this tranquility? Schopenhauer pointed to three truths we must learn to accept. First, suffering is inevitable. Life by its very nature involves pain, disappointment, and loss. Trying to outthink or outsmart suffering only deepens our misery. Instead, we must learn to coexist with it, recognize it as part of the human condition. Second, we must recognize the limits of our understanding. No matter how intelligent we are, there will always be mysteries beyond us, questions we cannot answer. Accepting this can be liberating. It frees us from the exhausting pursuit of certainty, from the restless search for meaning in places where none can be found. And third, Schopenhauer urged us to find value not in grand achievements or intellectual triumphs, but in the small, fleeting moments of beauty and connection that life offers. A sunset, a favorite piece of music, a quiet conversation with someone we love. These experiences, however ordinary they may seem, are more profound than the cleverest argument or the greatest accomplishment. But Schopenhauer didn't stop there. He went further, suggesting that the ultimate form of tranquility lies in letting go of the self itself, the very part of us that craves understanding, control, and recognition. Here he drew deeply from Eastern traditions, especially Buddhism, which had a powerful influence on his thinking. To transcend the ego, he believed, was to break free from the endless cycle of desire and suffering, the very cycle that intelligence so often intensifies. So what does this mean for you? Maybe it's not about silencing your intelligence, but about learning to live alongside it. Not about suppressing thought, but about loosening its grip. So what does this look like in everyday life? How do Schopenhauer's insights about intelligence actually play out in the way we experience the world? To understand this, we have to look at a central principle in his philosophy: the will to live. According to Schopenhauer, the will to live is the fundamental force driving all existence. It's blind, relentless, and insatiable. It compels every living thing to survive, to reproduce, to strive forward, even though suffering and loss are inevitable. Here's the unsettling part: this will doesn't care about our happiness. It pushes us onward, regardless of whether our lives are meaningful or joyful. In Schopenhauer's words, we are all slaves to the will, trapped in a cycle of desire, striving, and dissatisfaction. And this is where intelligence makes things even harder. For the less intelligent, life under the will might feel tolerable. They chase desires without questioning them. They pursue goals and enjoy simple distractions without worrying too much about deeper meaning. But for the highly intelligent, the story is very different. Their heightened awareness lets them see through the illusions of the will. They realize how futile it is to chase one desire after another, only to be left unsatisfied again and again. This clarity comes at a cost. It creates a disconnect, a sense of separation between the intelligent individual and the rest of humanity. How do you relate to people who find joy in what you now see as hollow illusions? How do you connect with those who are content with superficial pursuits when you've glimpsed the darker truths of existence? For Schopenhauer, this disconnection often makes the intelligent feel like outsiders, watchers, instead of participants. They observe the world but don't fully belong to it. They see its absurdity, its transience, and its endless cycle of craving, and this knowledge isolates them. And yet here lies another paradox. The very intelligence that deepens our suffering also gives us a possible way out. Schopenhauer believed that through art, contemplation, and moments of pure perception, we can step beyond the will, if only for a little while. For Schopenhauer, art was not just decoration or entertainment. It was a doorway, a rare escape from the suffering imposed by the will. When we engage with art, whether through music, literature, or visual beauty, we enter a state he called pure perception. In those moments, we are no longer consumed by desire, ambition, or the restless demands of the will. Instead, we simply observe, appreciate, and exist. Take music, for example. Schopenhauer believed music stood above all other art forms because it spoke directly to the essence of existence itself. While painting or poetry represents the world, music, in his view, expresses the will in its purest form. It bypasses words and intellect, resonating with something deep and timeless within us. That's why music can move us so profoundly. It touches the very core of our being, offering solace where logic cannot. Think about a time when you were swept away by a symphony or when a single song captured an emotion you couldn't put into words. For that brief moment, life's chaos seemed to fade. You weren't striving, chasing, or analyzing. You were simply feeling. Schopenhauer saw these moments as glimpses of freedom where we step outside the endless cycle of wanting and find peace. But art was only one path. Schopenhauer also believed that intelligence, when properly guided, could help us quiet the will. He spoke of cultivating a state of detachment, a way of stepping back from our endless cravings and learning to view life with a calm, accepting gaze. Of course, this is easier said than done. We live in a world that glorifies ambition, success, and the constant pursuit of more. The idea of detachment, of stepping away from striving, can feel almost like heresy. But for Schopenhauer, true fulfillment doesn't come from achieving more or knowing more. It comes from letting go of desires, of expectations, even of the need to make sense of everything. So let me ask you this: how often do you feel crushed by the pressure to achieve, to keep climbing higher, to always be more? What if the answer isn't doing more, but doing less? What if happiness isn't about adding to your life, but about simplifying it? Schopenhauer's ideas didn't exist in isolation. His philosophy influenced and was later echoed by some of the greatest minds in psychology and existential thought. Figures like Nietzsche, Freud, and even modern psychologists drew on his insight into the restless nature of human desire and the burdens of intelligence. Why has his work endured for so long? Because it speaks directly to the universal struggles of the human condition. We all wrestle with dissatisfaction, isolation, and the endless chase for meaning. Schopenhauer dared to strip away the illusions and show us the raw truth. Intelligence sharpens our vision, but often at the cost of peace. And yet his philosophy is not just about despair, it's also about liberation. By understanding the hidden costs of intelligence, we gain the power to step outside its traps. The same awareness that isolates us can also free us if we learn how to direct it. Schopenhauer saw two main ways this liberation could happen: through art, which we've already discussed, and through the conscious practice of quieting the will. This means developing habits of reflection, mindfulness, and simplicity. In essence, using intelligence not to amplify suffering, but to soften it. Think about how different this is from the way most of us are taught to use our minds. Society tells us intelligence should be used to achieve, to outcompete, to dominate. Schopenhauer flips that idea on its head. He suggests intelligence can be used to let go, to stop striving, to quiet the endless demands of the will, and to rest in the peace of acceptance. And here's the most fascinating twist. While Schopenhauer is often labeled as pessimistic, his philosophy can actually feel incredibly empowering. Once we stop expecting life to be perfect, once we stop demanding that intelligence lead us to lasting happiness, we discover something richer: clarity, serenity, and a deeper connection to what truly matters. So instead of intelligence being a curse we cannot escape, Schopenhauer offers a reframing. It can become a tool for transcendence. It depends on how we choose to use it. Now let's move from theory into practice. If intelligence really is a double-edged sword, how do we use it without cutting ourselves? How can Schopenhauer's wisdom actually guide our daily lives? The first step, he argued, is awareness. Most of us move through life blindly chasing desires, wealth, recognition, status, believing that once we achieve them, we'll finally feel satisfied. But even when we get what we want, the satisfaction fades quickly, and our mind latches on to the next goal. It's an endless loop. Schopenhauer urged us to stop and observe this cycle, to ask ourselves, why do I want this? What do I expect it to give me? Often we'll discover that the things we chase are shaped more by social expectations or fleeting impulses than by genuine needs. This simple act of questioning helps loosen the grip of desire, but awareness alone isn't enough. Schopenhauer emphasized the practice of mindful detachment. That doesn't mean withdrawing from life or becoming indifferent. It means learning to participate in the world without being consumed by it. One powerful way to do this is through meditation or simply spending time in stillness. By observing your thoughts instead of being swept away by them, you create space between yourself and the chaos of the mind. Over time, this practice builds calmness even in the midst of life's storms. Another tool he valued deeply was the nourishment of the mind through philosophy, art, and music. Schopenhauer believed these weren't just luxuries, they were lifelines. They allow us to step outside the ceaseless demands of the will and connect with something timeless. When you lose yourself in a great novel, a piece of music, or a work of art, you aren't just escaping life. You're touching a deeper truth, something that transcends the everyday. Schopenhauer also saw intelligence as a path to compassion. This might sound surprising given how often intelligence leads to isolation. But for him, the solution to feeling cut off was recognizing that suffering is universal. Everyone is caught in the same cycle of desire and dissatisfaction. When we understand this, we stop seeing others as competitors and start seeing them as fellow travelers. And that shift from judgment to compassion changes everything. Among Schopenhauer's most controversial yet profound ideas was the concept of renunciation. He believed that the ultimate path to liberation lies not in chasing more desires, but in letting them go along with the ego that clings to them. The ego, according to Schopenhauer, is the voice inside us that constantly demands recognition, achievement, and control. It tells us we need to prove ourselves to accumulate more, to never stop striving. And yet it's this very ego that traps us in suffering. By loosening its grip, Schopenhauer argued, we open ourselves to a deeper peace that doesn't depend on constant struggle. This idea was heavily influenced by Buddhist philosophy, which Schopenhauer admired. In Buddhism, freedom comes not from satisfying the self, but from transcending it, seeing through the illusion of the ego, and letting go of its endless cravings. Schopenhauer wove this into his own philosophy, offering a vision of life where true liberation comes through surrender, not conquest. Of course, renunciation doesn't mean abandoning life or retreating from the world entirely. Schopenhauer wasn't advocating for apathy. Instead, it's about approaching life with humility and detachment, living fully, but without clutching so tightly to our desires and fears. Think about how much mental energy we spend worrying about the future or regretting the past. How much of your own life has been consumed by trying to control things that in the end were beyond your control. Now imagine what it would feel like to set down that burden even for a moment, to stop fighting against what is and to simply be. That's the kind of peace Schopenhauer was pointing toward. What's remarkable is that while his philosophy is often painted as bleak or pessimistic, it actually offers a form of empowerment. By confronting life's harsh truths head-on, and by letting go of the illusions that keep us trapped, we discover a happiness that isn't shallow or fragile. It's a deeper kind of happiness rooted in acceptance, presence, and the quieting of the will. As we approach the conclusion of Schopenhauer's ideas, it's worth asking, what does it mean to live a truly intelligent life? His answer might surprise you. For him, true intelligence wasn't about collecting endless facts, solving puzzles, or dazzling others with cleverness. It was about wisdom. Wisdom, in Schopenhauer's view, meant understanding the nature of existence, embracing its contradictions, and finding peace within them. It wasn't about escaping life, but about living it more fully without illusions, without denial, and without being enslaved by the will. He believed that the real measure of intelligence is not how much knowledge we possess, but how we use it. Do we let our intellect trap us in overthinking, restlessness, and despair? Or do we use it to cultivate compassion, clarity, and detachment? The choice, Schopenhauer argued, shapes the course of our lives more than anything else. Think of it this way: intelligence is like a bright lamp. It can light up the world, but it can also cast long, heavy shadows. The question is whether we let those shadows overwhelm us, or whether we learn to see beauty even in their presence. This is why Schopenhauer's philosophy continues to resonate even in modern times. We live in an age obsessed with achievement, productivity, and endless growth. Intelligence is often treated like a ticket to success, but Schopenhauer reminds us that intelligence also carries responsibility. It forces us to confront truths that many would rather avoid. And with that awareness comes a new challenge to live wisely, not just cleverly. So perhaps the truly intelligent life is one that balances understanding with acceptance. A life where intelligence isn't used to endlessly dissect the world, but to connect more deeply with beauty, with compassion, and with the fleeting moments of peace that give life meaning. In that sense, intelligence is both a burden and a gift, and how we choose to carry it will determine whether it becomes a curse or a path to freedom. Now that we've explored Schopenhauer's insights, let's gather them into a clear path we can actually live by. His philosophy isn't just abstract, it offers practical wisdom for transforming how we approach intelligence, suffering, and peace. The first principle is acceptance of life's duality. Schopenhauer taught that life is never pure joy nor pure suffering, it's always both. Every moment of happiness carries the shadow of potential loss. Every hardship contains the seed of growth. To live wisely, we must stop expecting life to deliver constant pleasure and instead embrace its contradictions. By doing this, we reduce unnecessary disappointment and learn to savor moments of peace precisely because they are fleeting. The second principle is detachment. Much of our suffering comes from clinging to desires, ambitions, relationships, even to our own identity. Detachment doesn't mean abandoning these things. It means loosening our grip. Imagine holding a butterfly. If you squeeze too tightly, you crush it. If you hold it lightly, you can enjoy its beauty without causing harm. That's the essence of detachment, engaging with life without being enslaved by it. The third principle is the pursuit of higher meaning. For Schopenhauer, art, philosophy, and reflection weren't luxuries. They were essential. These activities allow us to rise above the endless demands of the will and connect with something timeless. When you lose yourself in music, a profound novel, or deep contemplation, you're not escaping life. You're enriching it, touching the universal, the eternal, and stepping outside the chaos of daily striving. The fourth principle is compassion. Schopenhauer believed that recognizing the shared suffering of all beings is the key to connection. Compassion allows us to see others not as rivals, but as fellow travelers on the same difficult path. This shift breaks down the isolation intelligence often creates and transforms it into empathy and belonging. Finally, the fifth principle is quieting the will. The ultimate goal is not to escape life, but to find peace within it. Practices like meditation, mindfulness, or even spending time in nature can help us silence the restless demands of the will. Imagine sitting by a still lake, the water mirroring the sky, your mind calm and uncluttered. That serenity Schopenhauer believed is available to anyone willing to quiet their striving. Together, these principles form a guide not just for the intelligent, but for anyone seeking a more authentic, peaceful existence. So we return to the question we began with: is intelligence a gift or a burden? After walking through Schopenhauer's philosophy, the answer is clear: it's both. Intelligence can sharpen our awareness, expose illusions, and reveal uncomfortable truths about life. But it can also isolate us, weigh us down, and strip away the simple pleasures others take for granted. And yet Schopenhauer reminds us that intelligence is also a beacon. When we learn to quiet the will, cultivate compassion, and embrace life's dualities, intelligence can lead us to clarity, wisdom, and a deeper sense of peace. It doesn't have to be a curse. It can be the very tool that frees us from suffering. This perspective flips the common narrative. Society often tells us to use intelligence to accumulate, to compete, to achieve. Schopenhauer tells us to use it differently, to let go, to simplify, to live with balance and humility. True intelligence, in his view, isn't about knowing everything. It's about seeing life as it is and finding serenity within it. So as you reflect on these ideas, ask yourself, how do you use your intelligence? Do you let it trap you in endless cycles of overthinking, chasing, and dissatisfaction? Or do you use it to cultivate stillness, compassion, and perspective? The choice is yours. Intelligence can be a source of despair, but it can also be a path to transcendence. It depends on how you carry it. And that is Schopenhauer's hidden secret about intelligence. Not that it guarantees happiness, but that it forces us to confront life's truths, and in doing so, it offers us the chance to live more authentically. So as you move forward, remember this: the greatest wisdom isn't found in what we achieve, but in what we learn to release. Intelligence is not just a burden, it is also a light showing us the way to a deeper, more meaningful life.